been an avid drone user for most of my adult life. I grew up enjoying aviation, immersing myself in as many flight sims and aerial footage as I could find. It sounds silly, but even something like Elite Dangerous wasn't far from my mind if I was busy. I just couldn't get enough of the sensation of being able to explore the world around me to my heart's content in a wholly interactive manner. There's something inexplicably exhilarating about being able to maneuver effortlessly in 3 dimensions, to zip and zag across perilous obstacles like I'm an acrobat with wings, to stop and marvel at the majesty of creation in midair, drinking it all in. Which, I suppose, is why what transpired haunts me so. Why I'm hoping that by sharing this here, someone out there will have experienced what I experienced. I think that's the most terrifying thing of all. The notion that no other experienced drone user has stumbled across what I have. Seen the people I saw, the rising smoke when they... Remember the feather. Picture the feather. Ignore the knocking. Okay. Some background context before we begin. I live in a rural part of the English countryside, a beautiful part of Buckinghamshire that I have no doubt most of the world only knows of in its connection to the throne. But make no mistake, it is an ancient land, and it bears ancient secrets. Stories have been told for over 1,000 years of strange ongoings. Beasts lurking in the woods that venture too close to settlements and climb over houses, leaving devil's footprints in their wake. Those who venture into the forest to forage, only to vanish without a trace of them or their weapons. Strange, green-skinned children, emerging from pits designed to catch wolves, telling of a secret city underground, where everything is in perpetual twilight. Buckinghamshire is old, impossibly so. Perhaps that's what drew me to want to explore it in my own way. But being agoraphobic and suffering with chronic pain every day, the prospect of being out amongst people and in another flare-up so bad that I'd need to ask someone for help was less than ideal. But through video games, YouTube, a fantastic support network of friends, and the insatiable interest of exploration pushing me forward, I was able to find comfort in multiple outlets that just barely scratched the itch. And then drones came into my life. I still remember the first time I unboxed it. A DJI Inspire 2, and connected up the camera. My fingers tingling with anticipation as I sent it to look over the sleepy town I inhabit. I swear I could have burst into tears as the world around me opened up. I saw things in a way I'd never be able to otherwise. Not just in the sense of being outdoors, but the living, breathing parts of town nobody else would notice. The top of our church's steeple, the cracked and decaying statues adorning either side, like worn-down gargoyles waiting to pounce on unsuspecting passerby. The otters gently resting by the embankment as the farmer watches closely. Stress lines riddling his worn face like a roadmap of labor and guilt. I would relay my findings and enthusiasm to my co-pilot, a best friend who I'd met through the drone community, who lived in the next town over. They were nothing but supportive when hearing about my unusual fears. I'd come to expect scorn, ridicule, and a plethora of invasive questions that didn't remotely pertain to my interest. Avery was different. They just wanted to talk shop and truly know me. Not like the rest. What about getting a job? No, I've got a good one already. Thanks. What about getting a husband? Not interested. What about a wife? Also not interested. It made secluding myself easier. The monotonous routine gave way to more shut doors. both metaphorical and literal. All but my drone buddies and Avery were let in. "What'd you find, Skyrider?" They chimed, eager to hear my exploits and genuinely share in my excitement. I told them everything, unable to contain my glee. After I calmed down and ran through the next set of trip destinations, asking for suggestions, they grew silent and hesitant. "Well, there is one place I know of. It's been talked about for ages." Their voice adopted a slight aloofness, and I knew what they were getting at. "But you're pretty new, so I don't know if you're ready for it. One must have a true adventurer spirit to embark on such a place." My fingers curled around the armchair as I bit my lip, remembering the books I'd pored over with voracious interest. Learning about the numerous conspiracy theories related to the Earth, one in particular struck me, lingering in the back of my mind long after my eyes had stopped looking at it. The world under the world, enshrouded in twilight. History has documented so many anomalies and irregularities within it that it's nearly impossible to discern one from the other. But the one I mentioned earlier about the children emerging from a wolf's pit, green-skinned and claiming to be from a strange world bathed in perpetual twilight, yeah, that one never escaped me. You're talking about Sturgeon and Petrichor, the shrouded cities. But how did you know? I stuttered, excitement overtaking me. They chuckled, a warm reverberation that filled me with glee. I pay attention, Bailey. I'll be your co-pilot and lead you there, okay? Just follow my lead. With that, I flew the drone out to the coordinates they'd specified. A small field on the outskirts of an old town called Turvey. A derelict farmhouse in the middle of a field laden with rapeseed and the river Ozel on the other side. Nature was slowly but surely reclaiming the land, while a vein of concrete cut between the two landscapes, surging vessels of metal and smog to and fro. "Where do we go from here, Aves?" I chimed, feeling as if my own body had wings, floating around in the midsummer air. Their bronze behemoth gently swayed in front of me, as Avery considered their notes and made general noises of contemplation. "All right, looks like we need to veer left until we're parallel with the farmhouse. Go straight across it and over to the next field. There should be an abandoned set of tunnels, kind of like a warren, that'll come into view when we get closer." Nodding, I followed suit and let the sounds of rushing air fill my ears. The soft buzz of the drone putting me at ease as we flew through the air, zipping past insects and darting through crops until we came over the next field. The series of holes dotted around the large hills. Avery was right. They looked like warrens, but almost mechanical in nature. It took me a minute to spy the faint plumes of smoke coming out of them. It was a thick black tinged with red. Or maybe that was the glow emanating from the pit that gave it an impression of red. It was hard to tell at this distance. "All right, Skyrider. Documents say we need to go down the hole with the thickest smoke. It's gonna obscure our vision for a while. So, once you lock in your trajectory, don't adjust it if you can't see ahead of you. The tunnel should be a pretty straightforward dip down until we come into a clearing. Oh, and..." Avery turned their drone toward me, as if facing me in person. I couldn't see them, but there was a graveness to their tone that hadn't been there before. "No matter what you hear, don't respond." I blinked, stifling back a chuckle. "Avery, the only reason you can hear me is Discord. Why would some disembodied voice or animal noises hear me?" There was a long pause. Avery seemed to be considering something. "Forget it. Just be careful. Okay, Bailey?" Something in the way they said my name made me tense up. I agreed, and they began their descent, quickly zipping past me with an effortless twirl, and the sound of their motor echoing through the tunnel as they rapidly went out of sight. I took a deep breath and followed, pushing the drone forward and doing a quick, fanciful loop as some sort of arbitrary good luck ritual before locking my controls and diving headfirst into the tunnel. I don't know how to articulate it fully. Words seem to fail to properly encapsulate what I experienced, but it was an assault on the senses. As the sounds bounced off the tunnel and my dark vision was occasionally punctuated with bright, luminous spots of light, some familiar and some decidedly not. It wasn't like they were the most beautiful colors or the most horrifying, but simply beyond description. These flashes would dance around the lens, washing over it or covering it like a net before passing by, and the darkness returning, giving off the effect of a plunging roller coaster. Every motion made my stomach churn or the hairs on my skin stand up on end. It inexplicably felt like I was truly there, experiencing it with the drone.
All that's seen and unseen will be revealed in the dusk light.
Instinct took over, and I whipped my head around the room, unsure if the voice came from here or the cave. It was almost melodic in its tone, authoritative yet welcoming. "Hey, Avery, you hear that?" I called, still sending my drone down the cavern. No response. The whirring of the drone intermixing with a heavy pulse from somewhere deep below. Something was stirring. A few more tense moments passed, the pulse below creating a horrific ambiance, as the soft sounds of dirt being kicked around in quick succession grew nearer and nearer. It took a few moments of straining my ears, blocking out the motor and the pulse to pinpoint where it was coming from. In the instant I clocked on, I felt the same kind of primal fear one experiences when traveling down an underpass alone, or camping out in the woods, or, in my case, an unexpected knock at the door late at night. The feeling of being followed. I felt my joints push on the controls ever so slightly, determined to find a way to spin around and see what was gaining on me, despite how utterly stupid it would be. But I remembered Avery's words and kept my focus forward. Within a few minutes, the smoke gave way, and I exited into a clearing. Atop a series of hills overlooking a small but densely packed city, spires grew into the sky like weeds, wrapped in thick chains and with bizarre summits. One possessed a great cube. Each lay shuddering and undulating as it twisted. Another practicality pulsated. A bright turquoise light emanating from its base, and running up the length. Polyps growing around its concrete flesh like an infection. Atop it sat a great mushroom, swaying gently in the wind. It was still too far to make out any details from the town, but the Georgian-style buildings, intermingled with the occasional modern entertainment structure, were jarring to say the least. As I descended slightly, looking for Avery, I spied a sign hung above a large marble arch, twinkling with beautiful gemstones. "Welcome to Petrichor, the dusk-light city, bordered with sturgeon, the shrouded city." I took in a breath, held it in my lungs, and embraced the moment. I had traveled somewhere new. Even if it was through the drone, I'd gone beyond my comfort zone. I felt free. That momentary feeling of freedom shattered when Avery's panicked voice broke through the silence, shocking me enough into gasping and following their directions. "Bailey, I don't know if you can hear me. Look up." Slowly, I directed the drone upward, and the shock was so intense, I had to grip the controls to stop them from falling from my hands. hanging in the sky, shimmering with a glow that sent shivers down my spine, was a black sun. It radiated heat, and, inexplicably, malice from every tendril, as small black spores danced and dove toward the town, flaking off its obsidian surface and illuminated by the radiant white phosphorescent glow behind it. It was as if the devil himself was standing in front of God, blinding him from what went on below. It felt wrong to look at for too long. That's a dusklight eclipse. Legends say that under the sickly glow, people grow strange. Take a look at the building, Skywriter. I whipped around and searched for Avery's drone, unable to spot it in the red hue. Where the hell are you, Aves? I can't see you. It's a bloody miracle I can even get a signal with the drone this far down. Don't worry about it. I'm just over the next hill checking something odd out. Go check out the buildings and I'll meet you there, okay? Alright, just honk if you need me, I guess. With that, I flew down and toward the closest pack of buildings, tower blocks, and terraced houses with marble arches. The same large chains wrapped around the corners and hips of the buildings, as if determined to keep them from leaving. As I approached the top floor, I noticed the entire building's windows were either dark, shuttered, or with blackout blinds, illuminating the shadows of their occupants within, seemingly at odds with the turmoil outside. The couple on the top left corner were having an animated conversation. I couldn't tell you what about, but there was gesturing, finger pointing, and grandiose sweeping motions. A lover's tiff, maybe. After a couple of minutes, they shook their heads and began dancing, hand in hand as they gently stepped around their room, moving out of sight and toward their bedroom. But when they passed from the first window to the second, there was only one dancer, still holding the disembodied hand of their partner and nothing else. They continued to move, more animated and passionate as they held up the hand for a twirl that would never come. A weird prank, I thought. They must have spied the drone and decided to have a little fun. Time for me to move. As I descended to the next floor, I saw each of these windows house just one occupant. First was a man with the shutters slightly open, watching a TV show that housed nothing but static and a faint visage of a smiling face beneath. When he caught sight of me, I swore I saw the static reflected in his eyes, before I swiftly moved. The next row had been hidden behind blackout blinds, held in a strange yoga pose that contorted the limbs, bones pushed into impossible positions, and muscles straining to hold it all together. I shudder to think how close they were to snapping tendons and dislocating joints. A lone person sat huddled in the furthest corner of the middle window, shuddering uncontrollably as their head fixated on a spot in the corner. I watched them for a couple minutes, utterly perplexed at what they were so scared of. But as I oriented the drone to move on, I saw why. On the other side of the room, in the exact opposite corner, was another shuddering, undulating shadow person, pointing back. The last window lay untouched and unobscured. Despite concerns over Avery's absence mounting, my need to explore and discover in this newfound freedom and strange place gave me a false sense of security, like nothing could hurt me if I was just a silent observer. But as I gazed through the bay window, the top section of which was wide open, as this viscous black smog funneled in and wrapped itself around the poor soul on the floor, I realized I was more than just a silent observer. I was here to bear witness to something nobody should ever see. They were inert and unmoving when I first hovered into view, the smoke only just beginning its crawl toward them. I don't know if they were sleeping and forgot about the window, if they had accepted whatever this would do to them, or if they had an unfortunate accident. But that clearly didn't matter in the here and now. The smoke pooled underneath their body and began converging at the base of the skull, worming its way through their ears and mouth until they began to react. Eyes snapped open, and the back arched in such a quick and violent manner that I swore I heard something crack under the pressure. Toes curled, and a low, ugly groan left their lungs as gnarled fingers tried to move toward the source of their discomfort, their eyes. The eyelids sagged and flopped down on their cheeks, growing longer and beginning to house large, throbbing veins. I grimaced but couldn't look away. Their eyes rolled forward like billiard balls, heading for the pocket, an ugly squelch as they hit their mark. I gagged, audible and loud enough for this person to notice. In one swift motion, they cocked their head back, and the eyes flapped around their scalp like a malformed snail. Before they could make their way to me, I quickly floated away and took a moment to breathe. What the fuck was this place? Fuck! I jumped in my seat. Avery's shout loud enough to pull me out of the sickness, and the instinct to help kicked in. Aves, you okay? I crashed, Bailey. I'm over by a big dome on the tallest hill. It kinda looks like the warren we entered, but way bigger. And Oh. A pause. The sounds of footsteps, and a strange, low chanting. Oh, fuck. Bailey, get over here. Please. I don't want to... Silence. Avery? Avery, talk to me. Are you okay? Why does your drone being down mean your Discord's not working? No words. Just muffled voices and the sounds of dull thuds. Someone was arguing with Avery away from their headset. I sat there for what felt like minutes trying to figure out how I could get their attention, my focus waning just a fraction before being jerked back with one ear-splitting scream. Avery's scream, echoing into the hallway until there was nothing left. Some footsteps came close to the mic before the call was disconnected. Panic mounted, and I directed the drone up and away, surveying for the hill. I knew that Avery was safe in their home, but something in me screamed danger. The kind of primal feeling of concern that rushed through you when an animal spotted you in the wild. After a couple moments of frantic searching, I saw it. A large, white building encased in a dome with a small hole at the top, and faint smoke rushing out of it. Dissimilar to the one running through the town. As the drone hovered over, I took note of the sheer volume of houses locked up. Dozens of hooded figures rushing through the streets and the back alleys, undeterred by the smoke. Strange, but not important right now. The closer I got to the dome, the more uncomfortable I felt. 3 figures stood around the wreckage, the tall one barking orders to the 2 smaller ones, bending over to dig into the drone. Avery's drone was a sight to behold. A custom-built behemoth that they'd put stickers all over, memes and pop culture references with a proud envy flag at the front. It had been smashed to bits, like it had been shot or battered with great force, the engines barely running and billowing smoke as a small fire danced at the back. Slick hands reached into the guts of the drone, and after some degree of rummaging around, found what they were looking for. A GPS chip, still blinking. I recognized it from Avery's modding videos. It had an inscription on the side. If found, return to this address with a handwritten apology for fucking up my drone. I don't know how they didn't see me with how close I was, but they only spoke 2 words that I could hear. Emissary. Sacrifice. Without another word, they leaped into a nearby hole with the chip, like a trapdoor spider taking its prey. I panicked as I took the drone higher. What was I to do? Tell the police we traversed underground and strange mole people had taken one of us? No. The most I could do now was try to inspect what was going on and see if this was, I don't know, an elaborate prank, or maybe there was some way to help save them. Stupid, I know. But ultimately, I was unwilling to leave them alone. I decided the best course of action was to go back to town, follow the smoke trails, and see where they led. Sure enough, the thicker the smog, the more of these hooded strangers were congregating. I passed over back alleys and winding mazes, before coming across a stretch of marble road that ended with the Grand Hall building, upon the summit of which a sundial altar had been built, straps and all. The tall one I spied earlier stood by its side, shouting to the people. I wasn't able to hear from this height, so I descended slowly and carefully to hear, forever thankful that these people were fixated on him and not me. He had a powerful, smooth voice, with an almost lilting cadence to it. It echoed through the crowd and set my teeth on edge. Dusk walkers, the day has arrived and we are ready. The heretics are locked away in their hovels, content to live in this hellscape. When the dusklight eclipse parts, and the horrors of the Weaver's machinations descend. But we will not suffer that fate. We have been patient. We have listened and followed the signs. Followed the smoke. Soon, we will leave this place and spread our message anew. Like the formless smoke surrounding our beautiful Petrichor, we will burrow into the lungs of everyone we meet and bring them to our cause. He paused as the crowd shrieked, soaking in their adoration like a true narcissist. How many were there? 500? 1,000? Some had their children with them, babies cradled in fanatical arms, as disembodied voices threatened to tear their vocal cords in support of chanting. We awaited a true sign that it was time, and we found it, in the form of the Weaver's emissary. They came on a ship of steel and air, but we caught them, and understood their purpose without words exchanged. An offering for the sacrifice. A way to show our dedication as we depart. He paused, arms held in the air as he looked at an adjacent alleyway, from which a figure was brought out, dressed in a strange red and black garment, with ceremonial painting across their forehead, cheeks, and chins, wearing a burlap sack with a red engraving over the front. The prophet licked his lips, a blackened tongue with a white sheet caking the top, chunks of it missing as it retracted behind chalk-white teeth. Let us begin! There is no time to waste! They pulled the burlap sack off, and my heart dropped into my stomach. Oh my god. Avery. They had taken them from their fucking room. Avery thrashed with everything they had, members of this congregation touching their face and neck with gentle adoration, beyond elated that they were here. As they reached the summit, the prophet put that disfigured, veined hand on their forehead, and they grew limp and silent. I stifled back a cry, biting my lip to the point of blood being drawn, desperate to help but unable to act in any way. I had just wanted to explore with a friend. How did this happen? The chanting grew in ferocity and volume. Every member's eyes locked on the limp frame of Avery, as they were fastened to the sundial, the prophet reaching for a strange contraption and holding it above their head. "Avery!" I shouted, without even thinking, without consideration of where I was and the danger I was in. If they could get Avery? The chanting immediately stopped. Absolute silence fell over the crowd, and the only noise I could hear was my own furtive breathing. The prophet turned his head and stared directly at me, as every member of his congregation did so in kind. Around the city, the lights began to go out one by one, until the only light source was the crimson glow of the dusk-light eclipse, bathing its members in a violent hue. "Our Lord, they have arrived. We have prepared for this day in mind, soul." He lowered his hood as the others did so. "And body." I screamed. A guttural shriek of terror unlike anything I had ever experienced. Their heads were smooth porcelain domes, with the humanoid features so small I could barely make them out, the rest of their forms degrading to such a degree and twisting in ways that words couldn't adequately convey their morbidity. I don't know how long I stood there, shrieking, but the prophet did not take offense. Instead, he moved to a carving filled with his prophecies that had been set aside for the ceremony. It was old, rudimentary, and among the many strange occurrences he said would happen, a vessel stood, primitive in description, but unmistakably my drone. "And on the final day, we will be visited and observed for our readiness to ascend. They will bear witness and judge us worthy." With that, the prophet instructed an underling to hit a nearby bell, as the eclipse shifted and the black embers falling began to glow. The cloaked members pulled something from their pockets, and each one held it up to the sky. An incense candle. Within a minute, there was a sea of black-flamed candles glowing across this congregation. The prophet, the last one to light his. He stepped toward the center and observed his flock, the smoke collecting around them in large swaths. Without another word, he looked at me, smiled, and threw that incense candle to the ground, setting off a burst of flames that started at the feet and rapidly worked its way up the body, consuming the host entirely, cascading his form into a shadowy veneer. The blaze quickly obscured the drone's lens, and I rocketed out of view as I kept on screaming Avery's name. The last thing I saw before it went black was their eyes rolling into the back of their head, before the flames swallowed them up. The inertia from being thrown around hit me hard, as the blinding sun fixated on the damaged lens, and the drone unceremoniously landed in the field. The sun was setting, and I could make out the familiar, dilapidated barn bathed in a shade of orange and lavender. My hands still shaking as I tried to formulate a plan. I immediately called Avery's Discord, but it was offline. I called their phone, but it was disconnected, and when I tried to reach their mother, a cheery, distant voice told me they'd never had children, let alone someone called Avery. They wished me well and hung up. This was not possible. I sat there 2 hours later, distraught and unable to figure out where to go next. If the legends were true, the green children of Woolpit were never able to make it back to St. Martin's Land, the city bathed in constant twilight. The people could leave, but never return. There were clearly many things lurking underneath our feet that we never saw, never interacted with, just waiting for the chance to come up for air. I knew this because I'd been thinking about the last thing that happened before the drone shut off, and sent me into a frenzy trying to contact Avery and their family, before being told at every turn that there was no Avery. Someone walked toward my drone in the field while I was trying to call Avery. I only knew because I heard their footsteps through the still live audio and snapped my headset back on. I never saw their face, but I did see their eye. Yellow, bulbous, and pressed up to the lens. "Do you see what I see?" Immediately unnerved, I tore the goggles off and pushed them away. Which led me to now. Sitting in the dark, unsure what to do. Someone has been knocking at my door ever since. I couldn't see outside, but there was an ugly red glow coming through my curtains. And a familiar voice kept asking me the same question. I didn't want to see what they saw.
Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Group Horror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.